So, Chris, a solution that I'm looking for is one I send emails, the same email over and over and over again to customer inquiries, the same maybe 3 emails I send 5 times a day, and I have to retype the email. Is there a solution that Google has for me?
There is. When we were going through the settings, you might have noticed a tab called Labs. Labs are experimental features. They're not guaranteed to work, but in almost a decade of using Gmail and using Labs, I've never found one to break. I've never experienced one to break my Gmail, and I've used most all of them. We're going to start with the third one called Canned Responses. Canned Responses says it's email for the truly lazy. I'd argue it's email for the truly efficient. Here's the way it works. For any one of these labs you intend to use, you're going to click Enable, and then at the bottom, hit Save Changes. Once you do that, your email will reload. Now when I go to Compose, remember down here in the bottom right, we had, next to our trash can, we had these extra options. Notice now I have Canned Responses. Here's what you do. Once you type up the email for the last time, go to Canned Responses and hit Save New Canned Response. It'll save that email as a canned response. You then turn around and next time you need to use it, hit Canned Responses, then hit Insert, and that very same email text will pop right up in the center. You hit Send, and you're done.
Wow, no kidding.
You have to type that email one more time, and then that'll be the last time, because in the future you'll be able to use Canned Responses. Of course, all of these labs are free, and they're all experimental. That said, here are the ones that I think are the best to use, but you can, of course, use whichever ones that you prefer. I like the authentication icon for verified senders. That's because I do some eBay work. This works for some of the local banks, that kind of stuff. And what it does is it verifies that that email is coming from an authentic source, and it puts that key behind it. Helps prevent spam, helps prevent me falling for a spam issue. I like the Google Calendar gadget. I don't have anything on the calendar in this account, but on my account, when I enable that, it shows me my next several appointments one after another in a little gadget that shows up right here near the chat. Google Maps previews and Google Voice Player. Google Voice is a telephony tool that allows you to get recorded voicemail messages if you want. It gives you a phone number folks can call. Gives you an extra telephone number, also gives you the capacity to text. If folks do call you and leave a message, you can listen to that message right in the context of your Gmail. If you find yourself marking emails as read, you can have a Mark as Read button. It'll add a button to your toolbar that we talked about a little bit ago, and then instead of having to select the message, then go to More, Mark as Read, you simply select the message, one click, it's read. If you do have an info@ account that you want to have handy with you, use multiple inboxes. That adds extra emails so that you can see them all at once. A little further down, some folks, when they come from something like an Outlook, really miss the preview pane, where you can see the list of messages and a preview of the message without having to open it. You can enable that with preview pane. Quote selected text is another one that I like to use when I'm going to reply to an email and I want to select some text. I select the text, hit reply, and then that text that I selected is inserted as a quote. I could say something like, you said, here's the text, and then it comes as a quote because I've selected it that way. I also use the unread message icon. It adds up here. Notice at the top, I can see that there are a number of messages that are unread in these 2 tabs, but if I select the icon, I'll be able to see that right on the icon. It'll add a small little number right here to the bottom right-hand corner of the M. That'll tell me how many messages I'm missing. Of course, that tends to increase my stress a little bit. Notice here it says 7. That's really convenient. I like to pin that tab so that tab stays open all the time. Now I don't have to have such a large tab taking up all this space at the top. I simply have that, and I can see there are 7 email messages that await me. Again, any one of these could potentially break at any time. If you do find that, you might want, if you're concerned about that, you might want to hang on to this URL right here. If you load that URL, it'll load Gmail with all of your tabs disabled. Otherwise, I'd highly encourage you, take a look through the labs. We talked about canned responses, which answers the question you've asked, but there are lots of different experimental features. Bear in mind, some of them graduate from labs. Undo send, we talked about that earlier. That used to be a lab. It graduated and became a full-fledged feature in Gmail. But bear in mind, any one of these can go away at any time. Any one of these can eventually graduate and become full-fledged features.
Well, gee, Chris, I see that Google is making a lot of strides forward as far as making my life easier. Is there any of these labs that would streamline my contacts?
There's not a lab necessarily to handle contacts, but I'd argue that Google Contacts is in and of itself quite robust. Let's spend a few minutes talking about contacts in the next module.